The lump of coal sat under laboratory light at Station 12, 17 miles north of London, in the autumn of 1942. Its surface showed the dull black luster of bituminous coal, rough texture, irregular shape, the compressed carbon that railway workers across industrial Europe shoveled by the ton into locomotive fireboxes. To any German fireman who handled fuel daily, this was coal, ordinary, unremarkable, disposable, except it contained a quarter pound of plastic explosive designed to detonate the moment it touched flame. This was SOE's answer to an impossible problem. By 1942, Nazi Germany controlled territory stretching from the French Atlantic coast to the gates of Moscow. They moved everything by rail: troops, tanks, ammunition, fuel. The Deutsche Reichsbahn and captured railway networks were the arteries keeping the German war machine alive. Destroy enough locomotives, and you crippled German logistics. But conventional sabotage required resistance fighters to approach guarded infrastructure, plant explosives, and escape before German patrols discovered them. Many died trying. Britain needed something different, something that required no technical expertise, something that could be planted by anyone with access to a coal pile, something that would destroy locomotives from the inside, leaving no evidence of sabotage. Just another mysterious boiler explosion that German investigators would attribute to equipment failure. The solution came from a secret weapons laboratory hidden in the English countryside, where engineers had spent months perfecting the craft of deception. They molded plastic explosive into shapes indistinguishable from real coal, matched the weight and texture, coated each piece with authentic coal dust. Between 1941 and 1945, Station 12 would produce 3.5 tons of these weapons. Thousands of devices distributed across occupied Europe, waiting to be shoveled into German fireboxes by the enemy's own hands. This is how Britain weaponized coal. This is how fake fuel helped destroy the Third Reich from the inside. To understand why British intelligence needed fake explosive coal, you have to understand how completely Nazi Germany depended on railways. By 1941, German forces had conquered most of Europe. They controlled territory stretching from the French Atlantic coast to the Eastern Front, where millions of soldiers fought along a line extending thousands of miles. Moving that army required moving everything: troops rotating from rest areas to combat zones, replacement tanks and artillery pieces, ammunition by the trainload, food rations, medical supplies, fuel for vehicles that could not refuel themselves. Germany moved almost all of it by train. Road transport consumed precious petroleum that Germany could not spare. The Reich's synthetic fuel production never met demand. Every liter of gasoline burned by trucks was a liter unavailable for panzer divisions or Luftwaffe fighters. Railways consumed coal, and coal Germany had in abundance. Domestic mines in the Ruhr and Silesia, plus captured Belgian and Polish coal fields. The Deutsche Reichsbahn became the logistics backbone of the entire German war effort. Without it, the Wehrmacht could not sustain operations across occupied Europe. This dependency created a vulnerability. Conventional sabotage attempted to exploit it. Resistance networks cut track, destroyed signals, demolished bridges. But track could be repaired in 24 hours by railway maintenance crews who traveled with German security detachments. Bridges were heavily guarded, and approaching them meant certain death for saboteurs caught in the open. The few successful bridge demolitions required coordination, explosives expertise, and routes of escape that rarely existed. The human cost was devastating. French resistance fighters died by the hundreds attempting railway attacks. German reprisals killed thousands more. Hostages shot in retaliation for sabotage. Entire villages burned. The strategic impact never matched the sacrifice. Germany kept the trains running. Britain needed a weapon that avoided this calculus entirely. Something that required no approach to guarded infrastructure, no technical training, no exposure to German patrols during placement or escape. Something that resistance fighters could deploy simply by gaining access to a coal pile. Something that existed at every railway yard, every locomotive depot, every fuel storage facility across occupied Europe. The weapon needed to destroy locomotives specifically. Track could be fixed in days. Locomotives required months of factory work to replace. Destroying the engines meant destroying German mobility itself. That required sabotage from the inside, and that required coal that was not coal. Station 12 at Aston House had been relocated from Bletchley Park in November 1940 after explosives testing disturbed the codebreakers working next door. Under Colonel Leslie Wood's command, the repurposed Hertfordshire Manor became SOE's primary weapons factory. By war's end, it would produce 12 million time pencil detonators and over 38,000 limpet mines. But among its most ingenious products were explosive devices disguised as ordinary lumps of coal. The technical challenge was deceptively complex. Real coal varied wildly depending on geological origin. Lignite from younger deposits appeared brown, almost woody in texture. Anthracite from older formations showed glossy black surfaces and sharp fracture patterns. Bituminous coal, the type most commonly fueling German locomotives, fell somewhere between, displaying variable luster and irregular shapes. Each type had distinct weight, texture, and visual characteristics that experienced railway workers recognized instinctively after years of handling fuel. The explosive coal needed to pass that instinctive recognition test. It needed to survive being thrown from shovels, dumped from coal tenders, jostled against genuine coal without cracking open, and it needed to detonate reliably when exposed to firebox temperatures exceeding 1,000 degrees Celsius, not prematurely when merely warm, not failing to ignite when surrounded by flame. Early prototypes involved drilling actual coal lumps with serrated tubes, extracting the center, filling the cavity with explosive, and concealing the entry point with coal dust and adhesive. Laboratory assistant Arthur Christie conducted these experiments personally, inserting about a quarter-pound of plastic explosive into each drilled piece, but the method proved fragile. Coal's natural cleavage planes meant drilling often caused the entire lump to split apart. Even successful specimens showed visible seams. The breakthrough came from Station 15, at the thatched barn in Boreham Wood, where Elder Wills commanded SOE's camouflage section. Wills had been a film art director before the war. He recruited over 300 film production workers and prop makers, including Wally Bull, who would later work on Stanley Kubrick's 2001, A Space Odyssey. Bull developed molded explosive coal, using dyed Herculite plaster poured into clamshell molds around the explosive charge. The plaster set firm, then was coated with genuine coal dust while still tacky. Final production models encased the explosive core. Nobel 808 plastic explosive paired with a number 27 detonator and heat-sensitive fuse in thin metal shells before pouring plaster around them. The result eliminated visible seams entirely. Different molds produced different sizes matching lignite, anthracite, and bituminous varieties. Each batch was color-matched using mineral dyes and authentic coal dust collected from actual fuel supplies. Perfect camouflage. Between 1941 and 1945, Station 12 produced approximately 3.5 tons of explosive coal. At roughly a quarter-pound per device, this represented somewhere between 6,000 and 14,000 individual weapons. Each one was packed in crates marked with innocuous supply designations, loaded onto trucks, and transported to RAF Tempsford in Bedfordshire, the airfield that did not officially exist. Tempsford served as the departure point for SOE's clandestine air operations. Number 138, Squadron, and Number 161, Squadron flew Halifax, Stirling, and Lysander aircraft on night missions over occupied Europe. Navigating by dead reckoning and celestial observation, often through anti-aircraft fire and German night fighter patrols, these squadrons delivered agents and supplies to resistance networks operating behind enemy lines. By war's end, they had flown over 13,500 sorties, dropping more than 10,000 tons of supplies. The explosive coal flew in those aircraft holds, nestled among containers of weapons, ammunition, radio equipment, and forged documents. Pilots flew low over designated drop zones, watching for signal fires arranged in prearranged patterns. Resistance operatives on the ground waited in darkness, listening for engine noise, ready to retrieve containers before German patrols arrived to investigate. France received the largest share. SOE sent 470 agents to France between 1941 and 1944, each supported by supply drops that included explosive coal shipments. Belgium, Norway, Poland, and Yugoslavia all received allocations. Yugoslav partisans, under Tito, found the weapon particularly valuable. Their constant attacks on German railway supply lines meant access to locomotive facilities and coal storage yards. The beauty of explosive coal was its simplicity. Resistance operatives received minimal instruction: plant the devices in German coal piles and wait. No technical expertise required, no close approach to guarded railway infrastructure, no need to breach security perimeters or evade sentries during placement. Just place the weapon where German workers would find it naturally and shovel it into their own equipment during routine operations. The firebox would do the rest. Once the fake coal entered a locomotive firebox, the heat-sensitive fuse would ignite. The quarter-pound of plastic explosive would detonate with enough force to rupture a steam boiler operating at several hundred pounds per square inch of pressure. The locomotive would tear itself apart from internal overpressure, boiler tubes fragmenting, metal peeling back, superheated steam escaping catastrophically. And every coal pile in occupied Europe became a potential threat. Germany now had to suspect its own fuel supply. Here is where the story becomes complicated. Despite 3.5 tons produced and distributed across occupied Europe, documented records of specific explosive coal attacks remain remarkably sparse. No named operations, no specific dates and locations. No confirmed locomotive kills appear in declassified SOE sources. For a weapon manufactured by the thousands and deployed across multiple countries, the historical record is almost silent. This absence requires explanation. The weapon was designed to leave no evidence of sabotage. A successful attack would appear as an accidental boiler explosion, impossible to attribute to enemy action. German investigators arriving at wreckage would see catastrophic mechanical failure, metal fatigue, faulty boiler construction, operator error, allowing pressure to exceed safe limits. They would find fragments of a destroyed locomotive, twisted metal, ruptured steam lines, perhaps bodies of the crew killed in the blast. What they would not find was evidence of explosive coal. The device detonated inside the firebox, surrounded by burning fuel at extreme temperature. Any remaining fragments would be indistinguishable from coal ash and boiler debris. There would be no unexploded ordnance to examine, no chemical residue that forensic analysis could identify as sabotage rather than combustion byproduct. That deniability was the entire point. If explosive coal worked as intended, successful attacks would be historically invisible. But the absence of documentation does not mean the weapon failed. It means the weapon succeeded at its primary objective, creating uncertainty. Once word spread that coal piles might contain hidden bombs, Germany faced an impossible choice: accept random catastrophic explosions in locomotives, ships, and factory furnaces, unpredictable equipment losses that could occur anywhere, anytime, or redeploy thousands of troops away from combat duties to guard coal supplies across occupied Europe. Station soldiers at every railway yard, every coal storage facility, every fuel depot from France to Poland. Neither option was acceptable. Accepting the risk meant terrified locomotive crews who knew that any shovelful of coal might destroy their engine and kill them instantly. Equipment losses that could not be predicted or prevented. Logistics officers who could not guarantee that trains would reach their destinations. Guarding coal meant withdrawing forces from an already overstretched military. Troops standing watch over fuel piles instead of fighting partisans or manning defensive positions. Resources diverted from combat operations to protect something as mundane as coal. The weapon's success was measured not in confirmed kills, but in fear, in resources diverted, in the fundamental uncertainty injected into every coal pile across Nazi-occupied territory. Britain had weaponized doubt itself. Germany understood the threat because Germany developed its own version. In June 1942, Operation Pastorius landed 8 German Abwehr-saboteurs on American beaches, 4 on Long Island, 4 in Florida. They carried forged documents, American currency, and sabotage equipment that included plastic explosives molded to resemble coal. Their mission: infiltrate American industrial infrastructure and destroy coal-fired power plants and railroad facilities, using the same invisible weapon Britain had deployed against them. All 8 were captured within 2 weeks. The FBI's investigation revealed the scope of German planning: coal bombs designed specifically for American fuel supplies, reconnaissance of target facilities, detailed operational plans. Germany never attempted similar operations against the American mainland again, but the episode proved that German intelligence recognized explosive coal as a viable strategic weapon worth replicating. More direct evidence came from British double agent Eddie Chapman, codenamed Agent Zigzag. Chapman was a career criminal recruited by German intelligence after being captured in Jersey. The Abwehr trained him in sabotage techniques and sent him back to England in December 1942 to conduct operations against British targets. MI5 turned him immediately. In March 1943, Chapman's German handlers gave him 2 coal bombs to sabotage the merchant ship City of Lancaster. Chapman followed protocol. He handed the devices directly to the ship's captain, who passed them to MI5 for technical analysis. British explosives experts examined the German coal bombs and found them remarkably crude compared to SOE designs. The Germans were still drilling real coal, filling cavities with explosive, and sealing entry points with adhesive. Exactly the method Station 12 had abandoned in early prototypes because of fragility and visible seams. While Britain had advanced to sophisticated molded plaster designs with metal-encased charges and seamless construction, German coal bombs remained at the experimental stage that SOE had surpassed years earlier. Even America adopted the concept. The OSS Research and Development Branch, under Stanley Lovell, developed an American version codenamed Black Joe. It used 6040 pentalite rather than Nobel 8-totem-8. OSS went further, creating specialized coal camouflage kits containing paints, brushes, and tools that enabled field agents to match explosive coal to local fuel varieties encountered in specific operational theaters. 3 major powers independently developed explosive coal. Britain pioneered it, Germany copied it, America refined it. The fact that all 3 invested resources in the concept proves its strategic value, even if specific attack documentation remains historically invisible. Imitation validates innovation. Whether explosive coal contributed significantly to documented railway sabotage numbers matters less than whether it contributed to the climate of fear and resource strain that characterized German occupation. The broader railway sabotage campaign achieved devastating results through combined methods. French resistance attacks achieved a 60% reduction in rail traffic from March to June 1944. 486 attacks around D-Day prevented German reinforcement of Normandy beaches during the critical first weeks of invasion. In Yugoslavia, maintaining rail transport required what one German general called enormous problems and heavy railroad security. Germany tied down at least half of available armed forces guarding supply lines against partisan attacks. Transfer to train security detail became so hazardous it was used as severe punishment for soldiers who violated military discipline. Contemporary documents emphasize that destroying locomotives specifically inflicted disproportionate damage compared to cutting track. Track could be repaired in days by maintenance crews traveling with security detachments. Locomotives required months of factory work to replace. Each engine destroyed represented hundreds of tons of steel, precision manufacturing capacity, and skilled labor that Germany could not spare. The concept's influence extended beyond 1945. CIA Historical Reviews note that given the importance of coal to economies on both sides of the Iron Curtain, future historians may need to explore how explosive coal featured in covert struggles of the Cold War. The weapon pioneered what became standard doctrine for disguised explosives: dead rats stuffed with plastic, explosive for factory furnaces, explosive logs for fireplaces, landmines disguised as animal dung, modern improvised explosive devices concealed in everyday objects trace their lineage directly to Station 15's innovations. Surviving examples reside in the Imperial War Museum, including 16mm test footage filmed at Station 17, the International Spy Museum in Washington, and the Museum of World War II in Massachusetts also hold specimens, physical evidence of a weapon designed to leave none. The lump of coal sitting under laboratory light in 1942 represented unconventional warfare at its most sophisticated. A weapon measured not in confirmed kills, but in fear, in resources diverted, in fundamental uncertainty injected into every coal pile across Nazi-occupied territory. British engineers turned Germany's dependency on coal into a vulnerability. They did it with a quarter-pound of plastic explosive hidden inside fake rocks that German soldiers shoveled into their own fireboxes. That was British engineering. That was SOE. And that was how fake coal helped destroy the Third Reich from the inside.